Okay, I think we'll kick off. I'm expecting quite a few people to join us, but we will make a start and see how we go. I'm hoping you can all hear me okay. This is the first time I've used Zoom for a web chat like this. We did a couple last week through a different platform, so we're just experimenting to see how this one goes. So if you've got any issues with sound or picture or anything, if you can let me know through the chat tool, and we'll try and see if we can adapt things to make things a little bit better. So well, that's great, Tom. I can hear as well, so that's good to hear. So thank you for joining us. Tonight's session is very much a kind of A to Z of Book Creator. We've got some people who are, from what I can gather from conversations I've had during the week through Twitter and things, some people who are completely new to Book Creator, some people who have used it before, some people who haven't used it for a long time and are hoping to get back into the way of things, maybe just catch up on a few new tools. And also a few people who are just interested in looking at how they could use this as a tool with either their own children or their classes in these new uncertain times. So first of all, to introduce myself, a few of you know me already, but my name is Martin Willis. I am a Book Creator ambassador and an Apple Distinguished Educator. I come from a primary teaching background. I've been teaching at the Edinburgh Academy here in Scotland for 12 years now. And for the last maybe 4 years, 5 years, I've been in the position of head of e-learning. So I'm predominantly responsible for our approach to technology use within our primary school, but also I'm becoming more and more involved in our approach in our secondary school as well. In fact, next year my job's going to be whole school responsibility for e-learning. So, that job very much entails a lot of coaching, a lot of team teaching, and kind of strategizing to see how best we can use the technology that we have at our disposal, which is becoming particularly useful at the moment. So Book Creator is an app that we have been using for a number of years now, and we use it from our very youngest children in primary one through to the early years of secondary, mainly our transition years. And that's one of the joys of Book Creator, is that it is a tool that you can use with a wide range of ages. And we'll come on to that later and explain why that is such a strength of the app. So basically the agenda for this evening is just to look at the Book Creator app. We are predominantly going to focus on the iOS app. It is available for Android and it's also available for Chrome. So you can use it on a Chromebook, but the two platforms are quite different, and we'll look at the differences this evening. If you aren't already using Book Creator, if you're not working in a school where you've got a one-to-one deployment of iPads, you probably will be looking at the Chrome version, the desktop version of Book Creator. The great news is that is free. And even if your children don't have access to Book Creator yet, either on iOS or on desktop, you could use that desktop tool to create content and share those with resources with your children. So we'll look at both platforms quickly, but we will focus predominantly on the iOS app, the Apple app. We're going to look at how you can organize your books and use the bookshelf tool to better improve your organization of books. We'll look at how you can edit and manipulate books after creation. So actually, how can you adapt books and apply them for differentiation and differentiated topics. We'll look at how you share books with students, whether or not they're using Book Creator already. And then we'll look at some examples of books I use in my classroom and look at building a book together and actually using the tools within Book Creator to create our own content tonight. So first of all, what is Book Creator? Book Creator is an open-ended creation tool for both iOS and Chrome. So by saying it's open-ended, what we're getting at there is it's one of the most powerful tools you can put onto a learning device. It's open-ended means that it's not already populated with content, and students have got the ability to build the content themselves or to work with content that you've already created for them. Students and teachers can create books, they can share them with each other, and they can even publish these books online and make them accessible to the wider world. So we'll talk a little bit this evening about how you can do that. The joy of Book Creator, or rather the biggest joy of Book Creator, is that it is so simple to use. It's so intuitive. And despite the fact it is simple to use and intuitive, it doesn't come across as being a childlike app, a really, infant style app. We've got children 10, 11, 12 who've been using Book Creator for a number of years, and they're still very happy to do so, very comfortable to do so. They don't feel that they're using a product that's too young for them, and they're actually able to create content that is really quite advanced and I believe quite impressive. The reason for that is they've got so many tools at their disposal, so they can use their voice, they can use text, they can use their written language, they can create content such as video inside Book Creator, or they can bring that in from other apps as well. So it really has the ability to cater for all and allow children to work in whichever way best suits them. So what we've got in front of us at the moment is a very quick screenshot or snapshot of the desktop version of Book Creator. So the big difference between the iOS app and the desktop version of Book Creator is that if you're using the desktop, Chrome version of Book Creator, you can create a class and you can invite your students into your class and give them login details so that they can access your resources that way. So you create libraries of books that they can go in and access. In our school, we've chosen not to do that, mainly because we are such an iPad-focused school. We are very fortunate to be in the position where we have that one-to-one deployment. So actually, we don't feel this is a tool that is required for us at the moment. But I can certainly see the benefits to that, and we'll touch on that briefly in a little while. We've touched on most of these points already. Okay, so we won't go through that screen at the moment. But again, just highlighting the fact that you can really use this in almost any curriculum area you can imagine. So if you're an administrator who is perhaps responsible for deciding which apps you should and shouldn't be purchasing, because there are cheaper apps out there than Book Creator, you're going to pay £5 or £6 for a copy of Book Creator, unless you're buying a school-wide license. It's a safe investment because of how widely it can be used. So what I want to do first of all is to show you some content that has been pulled together from teachers in the last 2 weeks across the world, just to give you some ideas of the types of activities that you are able to create on Book Creator. So this book that I'm showing you here is available from Book Creator, and I can send it to you as well if you want. So I'm now actually jumping into my iPad app here to show you this book. But this is a book that Book Creator released for parents, just to kind of show some of the activities that you could create for your students for remote learning. So, really simple pages where children can fill with content, either written content or pictorial content, using letters as elements that they can move around the page for anagrams, reordering words, reordering numbers. Putting in a simple picture and then using the pen tools, okay, which I'll show you shortly, to work out problems and puzzles. This tool here, which we'll investigate later, is the embed tool, so the ability to actually share web links directly into Book Creator. So here, the teacher has embedded a link to a website game, which the children can then manipulate and work on. And the joy of that is that website has appeared without actually leaving their book, without leaving Book Creator. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that this evening. Using pictures as manipulative tools for games. So you can really see the wide variety of activities that you can build, okay, using this one application. So if we go back to our presentation for a moment, as I've said already, my background is very much in primary education, and a lot of the examples I'm going to show you this evening are probably from that, from my own classroom. So they are focused on primary age children. But as I've said already, you can use Book Creator with children of, much older years. So this is an example of a World War II book that was created by secondary students. And you can see just by using the pen tools and the text and the ability to include video content in your books as well, Now, you won't hear the audio because of the way I've set up this Zoom meeting at the moment, but here is evidence that actually, secondary age children are able to use this app that I'm using with primary 1 and 2 children to create really advanced, mature content. Now, what they love about this when you get to older children is the ability for them to publish this content online and actually share it with an authentic audience. So these books can be shared, using QR codes, so you can attach them to a web link, which Book Creator can offer you, and I can show you how to do that. But also, there's nothing stopping you from publishing this content onto a platform such as the Apple Bookstore and actually making it available to the whole world. So when you start to deal with content in that way, you're really looking at the breadth and depth in which you can share content. So if we go back for a moment, there are some things to consider before we get into the demonstration, actually showing you how to build books and how to work within the app and work with your libraries. There are some things to be thinking about as we're going through this presentation, how this would work in your context. Are you thinking about your own child? So are you a parent that's at home and you're thinking about how you could use this to fill your days? Are you a teacher in a school which already has Book Creator implemented as an iOS, iPad deployment? Where are you there? How do you need to get app licenses for your children? Do they have these already? If you're not using iPads, are they going to be using the Chromebook desktop version? In which case, there is a license associated with that. Now, the good news is there is a free license, and the free license is perfectly acceptable to be working with at the moment. If you are using a free license, you are able to make up to 180 books, and you can sort them within, sorry, that's not true. That's if you're paying the first paid license version. If you're on the free version, you've got up to 40 books that you can create and have stored at any one time. Now, there's nothing to stop you deleting books, and then, once you hit your target of 40, deleting a few and then starting again. So, all of these licensing, if you're going to have children signed into a class to the desktop version, logins or something we can discuss separately. So, these are things to consider that you might have to discuss with other people within your institution before you can go forward. If you are in a school, though, where you are an iPad school and your children have got iPads and they've got the Book Creator app, you are in a position where you just need to learn how to make content and how to share that content with your students. Similarly, if you are in a school where you have got Book Creator and your children have got a device but maybe don't have the Book Creator app, you need to find out how to create content and share that with your students in other ways to allow them to access what you've made. Okay, so that's what we're going to go through now. So what I want to do is I want to come at my presentation here, and we've got a few people joining, so I'm jumping between two screens at the moment to make sure everyone gets in and no one's outside waiting. So I've got my Book Creator app here, and this is the iOS version of Book Creator, and you can see how it's organized. So down the left-hand side, on the top left, you can see this kind of 3-line menu, and you can see my bookshelves. Okay, so my first tip, if you're going to get started with Book Creator, would be to use the bookshelves and encourage your students to do so as well if they are using the app. Okay, because very, very quickly you can have your collection of books. If I show you all my books I've got on my iPad, and you've got to swipe through to get to the one you're wanting to find. Okay, now this tool in the top right hand corner is useful, that one with the squares at the top right, because you can use that to quickly see thumbnails of all your books. But if I just come out of that view, the best way to organize your books is through the bookshelf design. So you can see here that I've got bookshelves for different subjects, different projects that I've been working on, okay, different courses that I've been running for staff. So be thinking about bookshelves tonight, because we'll talk about how I set up those bookshelves and how I sort my books into those, okay? But what I'm going to do tonight is I'm just going to jump straight into creating a book. So up in the top right hand corner there, you can see this yellow button that says New Book. And I get 6 options. So I can choose between either straightforward books along the top here, or I've also got 3 comic strip book templates. Now, something to consider is that if you start to make a book, or maybe you make 2 separate books and you choose to bring them together to make one big book, which we'll look at this evening as well, you need these books to be in the same format. So you can't share or combine rather a landscape book with a portrait book. Okay. So the one that I use the most is landscape, because it fills the majority, the majority of the screen. When the children are viewing these books and they're reading them, it fills the whole screen. Whereas with the other book templates, I do find there's some wasted screen space. So here is the front cover of my book, and I'm going to start to build this book and build some pages and talk about how I might use this with my children. So this week, my class have been working on angles. We've been revising angles, and we've started to look at supplementary and complementary angles, as well as the angles within a triangle. So that's kind of the unit of work I've been looking at this week. So if I was creating a book creator for this series of lessons, what I want is a nice, tidy, consistent theme throughout this series of lessons. So what I quite often start by doing is going down to my plus button here, or up to my plus button, and this is where a lot of the magic happens. So really you need to use this plus button to get anything into your pages. So if I press that plus button, you can see that I've got the ability to add photos. I can use my camera to add content to this page. I can use a drawing tool. I can use text. I can add sound to my book as well. But then I've also got this more button, which gives me further options. We will investigate those shortly, but using the really simple shapes tool, I'm going to bring in a rectangle. I quite often like to, and you can see how they just snap into place and everything fits in nicely. So I quite often like using a rectangle across the top for my titles. And then next to the plus button, I've got my inspector icon here. And that's where I can customize and design any elements that I've got selected. So you can see here, when I tap on my rectangle, I get these blue holder icons around the perimeter of that rectangle. And so when I press my inspector button, I'm now customizing this rectangle. So I can change the color of that rectangle. And if I click on more, I can select almost any tone or color that I can imagine. And I'm then going to, what else can I customize with that rectangle? I can add a border to it if I want to. I can edit that border size. And so, there are things, I don't often like the borders, but there are things I can do there. Okay. Now, if I just double tap on that rectangle, I can now type within that rectangle, okay, to give my page a title. Now, the thing to be aware of there is that if you type within a shape, such as a rectangle, what you can't do, you can customize the color and you can customize the font. So there are fonts built into Book Creator, and this is what I really like about it. It's not just the typical fonts that you'd expect to see in your iPad. You get some really beautiful, really quite stylized fonts within Book Creator, which the children love using, and it allows them to really customize their content and also to create really impressive looking work. But what you can't do when you're tapping within a shape is you can't align the text. And I'm someone who's quite pernickety about things like titles. And I do like them aligned to the left. So rather than using, I'm just going to press my undo button on my keyboard here, but I've also got an undo button at the top. Instead of typing within that rectangle, I'm actually going to add another element to my page, and this time I'm going to add a text box. So my title was going to be Angles. And now I can put that Angles title wherever I want my page. So I'm going to pop it up here. And I can press my inspector button to customize my title. I can change the font. I can change the color of my title. I've got a really nice sliding tool here, so really nice and easy. I'm to fiddle with numbers or up and down arrows or anything like that. I can very quickly see whether or not it's going to fit. And there is my title ready to go. A relatively new feature for the iOS app of Book Creator is they have vastly increased the number of backgrounds that are available within the app as standard. So if I just don't select anything apart from the page and click on my inspector, I'm now editing my background. So there are solid colors, as you'd expect, but also I've got a whole collection here of background images. So very quickly they can add in really striking backgrounds. Okay, but also what I really like is you've got these kind of workbook handwriting templates, music templates, maths jotter templates ready as well. Okay, so I'm going to choose this squared background today. So this is kind of my main page ready. And what I'm trying to do today is I'm trying to create a book that I'm going to send out to my students, and I want them to learn, because obviously at the moment I'm not in the classroom with them, ready to speak and present. So I want them to look at this content and learn from this content, but I'm then also going to ask them to manipulate this content and add their own theory and their own thinking and their own learning, and they're going to send that back to me. And we'll talk a little bit about how certainly we do that in our school, because that might help you as well. So to build up this book creator, I want to revise right angles, because that's something we've been looking at this week. So I'm going to add a shape, and I want a triangle. Now, the issue with this triangle is that it's not a right angled triangle, okay? So I can manipulate this as much as I want to try and do. I'm not going to get a right angled triangle from that shape, okay? So what you need to do is you need to bring in from your camera roll a triangle of your own, okay? So if I get rid of these, and that's one downside to those shapes. If I go into my photos, it just so happens I've got a, oh no, I don't want that image at the moment. I want a right angled triangle, a nice simple one. Let's go with this one here. Okay, now this is a complementary angle triangle, which or rather task, which we're going to come on to anyway, so we'll just use this one. But to start off my introduction, I want to maybe add some text saying we've been learning about different types of angles. Okay, now what you'll notice is that text box has automatically picked up the features from my angles title. So the text box that I was working with most recently has picked up those elements. So I need to go into my inspector and change the color, maybe make it a little bit smaller now that it's not, a main title. I can stretch that text box out as well. But I think it's really important at the moment that your students are hearing your voice and feeling that they are actually receiving teaching from you, not just content. So I've got the ability here to add sound. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to embed a sound file directly into my book. Now again, I'm not sure how this will come out for you because of the way I've got this Zoom meeting set up. So you'll just have to trust me that I am recording my voice. So if I start my recording, okay, so this week we are learning about angles, and we already know that a right angle consists of 90 degrees. Okay, could someone mention, let me just, yes. If you're able to hear what I'm saying, let me know in the chat box. If you can't, then equally, let me know in the chat box. Now what that does is it creates this sound file icon, okay? And children are now able to access that learning just by pressing that button. Perfect, thank you for letting me know that, Kristen. So the children now can hear my instruction, okay? So all I was telling them there, or reminding them there, was the fact that they're 90 degrees in a right angle, okay? And what I could have done there was, if I take that sound file away again, I could have changed my question there to tell me everything you know about right angles. Okay, and I could instruct them to use the voice tool, or I could leave that open-ended. They could use their their video recording tool, they could use their voice tool, they could quite simply type if they wanted to, okay? So, you know, I might be quite happy with that page as it is, okay? So I would then go on to maybe talk about different types of angles. I'd go on to talk about complementary angles. I would want to talk about supplementary angles. And I could build this book, you know, to be as long or as short as I wanted to. So let's say that was all I wanted on my first page. But on my second page, I want to go on to complementary angles. I don't want to have to, you know, create this second page from start, from afresh. So what I do is I go up to my Pages menu at the top here. Okay, so I found that just up here. And I'm starting to see now the overview of my book template. So if I press down on this first page for a while, okay, it says, I get the option to copy that page. And now I'm going to press done and they'll stop shaking around. So now I've got two identical pages in my book, okay? Now, the mistake people often make here is they press cancel. And if you press cancel, what you'll find is you've just undone everything that you've done. You've gotten rid of this second page. To get back to your book creation, you actually tap on the page you want to go into, okay? So this is me in my second page, and I know that because of this information at the top of my screen. If I go back one step, I'm on my cover page, and then I'm on my second page. Now, teachers quite often use the cover as a front cover with maybe space for the child to put their name on, or a front page picture. I quite like getting straight into the content for a book like this, and the reason for that is sometimes I'll make 5 or 6 or 7 small books that I want the children to, as they receive them maybe once a day or once a week, I want them actually to combine them and bring them all together to make one book. So I don't want front covers all the way through my book. So we'll talk about that again in just a moment, okay? But if I go into my second page, because I've made an exact duplicate of the first, I can now use this as a starting point. So I'm going to change my title. So I'm now talking about complementary angles. And you can see, because my title's now too big for my text box, I just need to stretch that sideways. And I'm going to get rid of this text box because I've not spoken to the class about complementary angles before. And instead, I'm going to use that voice recording tool again. Oops, media, add sound. We already know that right angles consist of 90 degrees. Today we're going to learn about complementary angles, which is where a pair of angles, the measurement of a pair of angles totals 90 degrees. Okay, so I can now put this sound file into my book and it's there ready for the children. Now, what I would then want to do is I would want to demonstrate how they're going to find the value of B. And there are lots of different ways I can do that, okay? Personally, what I would do is I would go into an app like Explain Everything or Good Notes, and I would actually audio record my voice as I'm calculating and solving the calculation. With Book Creator, you've not quite got that feature, but what I could do is I could create that content in Explain Everything or Book Creator, and then add that video into my page. So you've got the ability to add, well, it says photos, but actually that brings up your whole camera roll, so you get video content as well there, okay? So for example, if I go into my camera roll here, I have got a video that I created in Good Notes this week, and you'll see that it compresses that. So all the time it's trying to make the file as small as possible, so it's as easy as possible to share with students. But I can actually bring that video from another app into Book Creator. Okay, and if I wanted to, just give it a wee moment to load. I'm sure it will get there. There we go. So if I wanted to, I mean, I could make that my book, the majority of my book, or I could simply have it as an example demonstration. And now when children play this video,
okay, so we already know that
they actually get the demonstration, an example on how to solve the problem. So you can see there my pen tool comes in and start writing. But let's say you didn't have the ability to create content in an app like that. The best way forward would be to use the pen tool. And you can see now it kind of drops a whiteboard on top of my book creator. So I can now use a whole host of different pen tools and pen colors. And there's some really quite fancy ones, which the children do like, but I'm not going to go for that today. And along the bottom here, I can change, select the size of point for my writing. So here I'd be actually trying to solve this question. So I'd be doing 9. Oh, that's not great because I don't have my stylus with me. Let me grab my pen. So I'd be looking to do 90, take away 18. Okay. And I'd show them how that came to 72. So obviously I wouldn't do it quite like that. I would teach it properly. But there is the example of how to complete that task. But then what I would do is I would add a voice recording to sit alongside that calculation of me talking through the process. But you can see there how an app such as Explain Everything or Good Notes would be really useful to actually create that live teaching video and bring that into to Book Creator. So that is one way in which it is quite useful to be able to bring other content in. So I might choose to have a few examples like that. And then on my next page, let me just copy this page again. And now these are shaking, I can move them around. You can your cover will always be at the front. You can't move the cover, but you can reorder your other pages. You can actually, if I've got pages here that I don't need, I can delete those as well. So let's go into this new third page and get rid of the things we don't need anymore. And actually what I want my children to do now is to show me, obviously after a lot more high quality teaching, rather than just the very quick demonstration I've shown you this evening, how they can do this themselves. So what I would do is I would go away and find my worksheets or download my resources from other websites, or create content myself, and I would bring in an image. Oh, that's the same one I used before. Let's see if I've got a better one for you, maybe more than just one example. What do I have here? Yeah, there we go. So here are 3 questions I want the children to complete for me. And in a normal teaching situation, I would probably just send this book out like that and explain to them what I want. But at the moment, when we're not in the classroom, again, I'd use a soundbite file, or even better, actually use my camera and maybe turn it around so they can see me. And I would actually do that explanation. So use the video tool to say, right, what I want you to do today is I want you to try and find these missing values by solving these complementary angle questions. So what you'll need to do is, just like I showed you in the previous example, find out what information you've got, subtract from 90 degrees, and see what you're left with. Okay. Again, I'm sure the quality of the teaching and the presentation of my hair, etc., will be far superior to that. But I can put that into this page, maybe drop this down slightly, and now the children have got some space to work. Okay. So very quickly, I've created a 3-page book with, some introduction, some explanation, some revision of what we've covered in previous lessons, a little bit of progress and teaching demonstration, and then a task. Okay, so this is a really quickly thrown together book, very rough and ready, but hopefully it gives an idea of how you can create a very simple book for the moment. So the question then is, how are you going to share this with your students? If your class, or if your school are using iPads, they've got their own devices, they've got Book Creator, you want them to be able to open this book up and bring it back into Book Creator so that they can manipulate it as they need and then send it back to you. So to do that, you use your share button, which is down at the bottom here, and you would select the epub option. So epub is a format whereby it turns into an electronic book, and they will be able to watch the videos, they'll be able to listen to the audio, and because it's going into Book Creator, they will be able to add all of those elements that we've discussed. However, if you do not have the ability for your children to interact with this content in this way, you have got some other brilliant options available to you. You've got the ability to send this as a PDF. Now, obviously, if you send it as a PDF, they will lose the video content, they'll lose the audio content. But if they've got an app such as Seesaw or Shobi, they will be able to open up that PDF and annotate it and use the tools within those apps to enhance that content. You've also got the ability to export this as a video. Now, what that will do is it will compress the book into a video file. I wonder if I can do it very, very, very quickly. And if I save video. So what will happen is it will turn this into a picture book, basically, whereby it will flick through the pages of the book. So if I go to my camera roll, and you can see here, it's turned into a 41-second video. And you can see it's flowing through the pages. It's giving children time to view the content that's there. Now, what's really clever is it kind of works out what content is on each page. So if there's lots of text on one page, then it will take longer before it moves on to the next page. So it is able to kind of work out how long children need before they move on to the next page. If there is a video or a sound recording on one of the pages, like we've got on our third page here, then what will happen is it will take time to stop, play that video, and then move on to the next page. So you can see here, it's playing my video. And then once that, inspirational moment of teaching has come to a conclusion, it will then be ready to move on to the page. So it's not going to move on until that video has ended. So that video tool might be really useful for you, okay? Just as an option, a way of getting instruction out to your children or information out to them. The final option that you've got down there is publish online, okay? Now, in order to publish content online, you need to have a teacher account with Book Creator. And that's what I was talking about at the start of the year, where you would want to log into an account. Okay, so even if you're using iPads to use Book Creator, you might want to set up a teacher's account so that you can push content to the internet. Now, there is a limitation in that you can only have 10 books on the internet at a time without paying for a subscription. Okay, so basically what happens here is I would give my book a title and then publish this book. And it takes a little moment. In fact, for such a short video, it's hardly taken any time at all to get ready. But what will happen is you will get an email as soon as that book is live. And what they'll give you is a URL link, which you can then share with parents or with children. And they can access that book on the desktop version of Book Creator. So they could manipulate that book through their internet browser. Now, because they're working on an internet browser, they don't get tools such as the video recording or the sound recording, but they do get all the other tools. They can still annotate things, they can still move things around the screen, and they can still give their feedback. What I found to be really useful for this is the fact that what you can then do is take that URL into a QR code maker or a QR code building website, and turn that into a QR code, and then display those QR codes around your classroom, okay, or share them with the parent body. And then when visitors scan that QR code, they're automatically taken to that book. And the way it presents itself, if I can go to the Book Creator website, it looks a bit like this. Okay, so this is a book that's been published to the website. Okay, so I can go through that. I can watch any videos that are there. So I can watch videos, I can't edit them. Okay, but what's brilliant about it is this reads to me feature at the top. So actually, as a teacher, you could create content, you could create a story text, you could create an information text, publish it online, and then children at home press that read to me button. Again, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, but it picks up the text and reads it to you. Now, that is a really useful tool in this situation, in remote learning situations. The ability as a teacher to prepare content, publish it online, and then share that link with your students or your parents and have that story read to them. Now, you can choose from different voices to have the story read. You can have it highlight words as it's reading. Okay. There's a whole selection of different features built into that. Now, what you do need to be careful of if you're using this feature is making sure that you're using text boxes. So if you were to bring in a picture, which is what's happened actually in some of these images and videos and things here, but actually if you were to bring in text boxes and titles, and you can see it working on this page, then that will be read to the child. Okay, so that's something you might want to consider in this current situation that we find ourselves in. Okay, so to do that, you build your books in Book Creator, either on desktop or certainly in our school situation, we would do it on our iPad app, and then you share it by publishing it online. Okay, now as I said, you need to have a teacher's account and you need to be signed into your teacher's account on your app. To do that, you open up your bookshelves, and at the very bottom here, you can see I'm signed in. So if I sign out, you can see here you've got this teacher sign in option that has appeared in the bottom left hand side of the screen. If you tap on that, you get the ability to sign up for a new account or sign up if you've already got an account. Okay. The other thing I like about this tool, or this feature rather I should say, is that it opens up this teacher resources section. And what that would do is it takes you to Book Creator's website, where there are hundreds of really high quality books available already, and they're all categorized into age groups and subjects as well, so that you can go in there and you can actually look to see examples of good practice. You can share these books with your students if you want, or even if you want, they've created books that give you ideas on how to design your content. But one book I want to show you here, if I can find it, is a book that was actually created by one of our primary 6 children. I wonder if I've got it open in a different tab already. And it was used for maths. I wonder if I've still got it here. No, possibly not. Possibly not. But we used the, here it is, this is the one I wanted. It's got my name on it, but I can assure you it wasn't me that created it. It was a much more talented mathematician than me. So you can see here what we did was we used Book Creator to create concept books. So as our children work through the maths curriculum, we get them to, at the end of every unit, reflect on that learning in their concept book. So you can see, they've been able to use the tools that are built into the app as standard to create really attractive content. They've been able to take photographs of their work, maybe once it's been marked by their teacher, things that have gone really well. They've been able to mark that work. They've celebrated their success, their feedback, but also when things don't go right, I quite like the children to photograph that work if it's incorrect, and then maybe using a quick screen recording or a clips video, explain where they've gone wrong and the learning that's come from that mistake. Okay, so this was just a really quick example of how we're using Book Creator in maths, okay, to celebrate work and to record our learning, which we're doing digitally. Okay, so we were talking about organizing within the app. We've looked at the different share options. Now, the most common sharing format, certainly in our institution, is epub, because we want the children to open this book again in their Book Creator's app, Book Creator app, manipulate it and send it back to us. So we would always ask them to receive books as an epub document. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that book with my children through Shobi. Okay. And I'm not going to go all the way through this process because I don't want you to, see children's names and things like that and actual pupil work. Similarly, I don't want to confuse my children at 7:45 in the evening when I send them books about complementary angles. So all I need to do is I go into Shobi, and then within the Book Creator app, it gives me the option to select the classes that I'm working with. So I put it into my own class. In fact, no, I wouldn't. I put it into my maths class. And then the way I have it organized is by subject. So it would go into my angles, and very quickly I can get that book into Book Creator. Okay. Now what they then have to do is they have to open that file and export it into the Book Creator app, in just the exact reverse of what I've done already. If I'd been a little bit more organized, I maybe would have organized a training class within Shobi, so I can show you that. But I'm sure, you know, that makes enough sense just by reversing the process I've been through. If you need further assistance with that, feel free to get in touch. But what children can then do is they can edit that book, manipulate it, and then send it back to me through an app like Shobi. That's certainly the one that we choose to use. And I can give them feedback on the work they've done. You can see here that I can see this book is one of my published books because of this icon here. At the moment, I've got all of my books in one huge big collection here. But we spoke at the start of the video about how you can organize your books into bookshelves. And so to do that, you find the book you want to organize. So here is a book that one of our teachers has created for their Vikings project. And actually, I must show you this book very quickly because I think this is a really excellent piece of work. Basically, what they've done is they've created a 52-page book here that structures their whole Vikings project. This is our primary 3 children that are working with this book. So they've got some, you know, pictures to investigate, some map work, you know, some colouring, some sorting activities, you know, sorting of words, you know, good and bad, video content. Now this is a big file because there's a lot of video content in here, okay? So I probably, especially in the current climate, would not be sharing this as one document. I would be splitting into numerous documents before I share it with children. That's what we're about to go on to. But first of all, I want to talk about how you get this into a bookshelf. So to do that, I've got this bookshelf icon on the left-hand side here, and there's lots within that menu. One of the options is move to bookshelf. And you can see here that up pop all of the bookshelves that I have. I'm going to create a new bookshelf called Vikings. So all of my books that I create about Vikings are going to live in that bookshelf. Now you can see it doesn't move from here, so I still have this all books bookshelf at the top where I've got all 48 of my books. But then if I go into my Vikings bookshelf, I can get to that book really quickly. Okay, so if this was a book that maybe I'd made, you know, 6 months ago, it would be within my all books bookshelf. It would be all the way along at the end. Okay, so without using that tile view, it could take a long time to find that book. So having it in a Vikings bookshelf is really useful. But there are other features here, and these are really useful. Okay, so we talked about wanting to be able to split a book into, you know, chapters almost, maybe daily chapters or weekly chapters. And this is what we've had to do with this book this term because, you know, we're not in school anymore. So what I need to do to divide this book up, I don't want to lose this book. I don't want to lose this unit of work that will have taken a long time to create. So I'm going to click on my bookshelf icon and I'm going to copy that book. And let's say I want to split it into 3 sections. Okay, I'm going to make an extra couple of copies. So I've got 1, 2, 3. And you can see now I've got my original text where it's all together. I can keep that as kind of my teacher copy. But I've then got 3 new copies of this book. And you can see at the bottom here that what's happened automatically is it's just been renamed copy, copy, a new book. If I export this file to anything, to Shobi, to files, to OneDrive, it will take that file name. Now, when you've got 48, 58, 68 books in your library, that's a lot of new books. So I would maybe call this Vikings Week 1. You can put your author name if you're really keen to make people know that you've put in all the work. Vikings Week 2. you get the idea of where we're going with this. And all I'm doing is pressing down on that title. Sorry, I should have said that. Okay. Vikings, week 3. So what I want to do now is I want to go into week 1's book, and I want to delete all the pages that are not to go to the children in week 1. Okay, this is the easiest way to do this. So I go to my pages menu, which is up at the top here, and I can see all the pages that are in this book. What I need to do is I need to click on edit on the top right, and one at a time, I need to delete the pages. Okay. Yes, it takes a minute or so to do, but it will make things much easier in the long run, because what it means is your children are not receiving all the content at one time. Now, I know for a fact if I was to send out a 52-page book to some of the children in my class, I'd have some children who would panic, I'd have some parents who would panic, but I'd also have some children who would think, great, I can get through the next 4 weeks worth of work in 2 days. I'm not going to do a great job, the quality might be quite poor, but at least I can get through the work. And the element of surprise that goes along with my Vikings work is gone. Okay, so decide how much of this content you want to share in the first instance. And you know, in some subjects such as maths, I'm maybe releasing new content every day or every couple of days. In something like social subjects, I'm maybe only doing it once or twice a week. Okay, now remember, I don't want to press cancel while these are shaking. I press done to stop them from shaking, and then you need to press on one of the pages. Okay, if you press cancel, it will undo all that deleting. So I've now got book 1. I'm not going to do that for all the books, you get the idea. I've now got book 1 ready to share. Okay, now let's say I had week 1 and week 2. Okay, I want you to imagine that, well, actually, let's do it very, very quickly. Let's go in here and we'll delete just a few pages. So we'll delete the first. Now remember, this is what I was talking about earlier. I can't delete that cover. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is how I can combine 2 books. So let's say school closures come to an end and we come back to school in however many weeks or months that might be. And the children in your class have got 3 Viking books complete with fantastic work that they've shared with you over Seesaw or Showbay or whatever format platform you're using. And you want them to now combine all of those books together. Okay, you're back in school, you maybe want a finished project book, you want them to share them, you know, as one finished unit of work. I want to get book 1 and book 2 to come together and make one new book. So again, in my bookshelf menu, I'm going to use the combine books option, which is down here. But this is the thing to remember that people often get muddled with, and it doesn't matter how often you remind the children, if they're not doing it regularly, they do get this the wrong way around. You need to be looking at the new book, so the book you want to make the finished copy. So in this occasion, I want to add book 2 to book 1, because it's going to go at the end of book 1. If I do it the other way around, what will happen is the work for week 1 will come after week 2. So I need to be looking at week 1 to start with. Okay, I go to bookshelf and combine books, and you can see here, because I've named my books carefully, it's really easy for me to see what content I'm wanting to bring in here. So I want to add week 2. Okay, and this is again why it's important to think about the, you know, are you going for a landscape book, are you going for a portrait book? I would not be able to combine a portrait book onto the end of this landscape book. Okay, and once I press copy, that's done. And now, even though it might be tricky for us to see, I've now got the content from book 1, and then I've got the content from book 2. And I can see that because I've got this title page in the middle here. Now actually, because these 2 title pages are the same, it's not a disaster. All I need to do is delete that second one. Okay, and I've now got one finished unit of work. Okay, so that's how you can use the combine tool to bring your books together. Okay. So we've gone through the options, or most of the options in this bookshelf menu. We've gone through the options for sharing books. The one we haven't gone through is this one in the middle, the play button. And this is really useful if you are working with your children, or you've got children who have received this book who struggle with reading and content. They can press that play button and they can now watch this book in full screen mode and flick through it. And if they want to, they've got that read to me feature at the top. So they can actually have this book highlight and read the text to them. And again, if they go into read to me, there are some options there. They can choose which voice they're going to use. It doesn't translate it. So if you go into French, it doesn't change it to French. It doesn't translate the content. It just puts a terrible French accent over it. However, I have heard rumours that they are working on something that might improve that situation. So that's that play button, really useful at the bottom there. Okay. Now there's nothing to stop you from making a storybook for your class or for your children or for your reading group, sending that out to them, and then all of a sudden they've got an audiobook that they can sit and track and listen to. Okay. There was something else that came to my mind there that I wanted to show you very quickly. Oh yes, my bookshelf button, that's how you delete a whole book. So if I decide actually, I'm finished with that book, I don't need, within the app, there's no limit, apart from the storage capacity of my device. There's no limit on how many books I can have here, okay? But if I choose to delete this book, or rather if I delete it accidentally, or a child deletes a book accidentally, there's no need to panic, because as it's saying there, it will keep it in your deleted books shelf for 2 weeks, okay? So I'm just trying to remind myself of where that bookshelf is now. And where's it gone? All books. Just having a wee moment. Recently deleted. There you go. Okay, so up at the top left-hand corner there, I can see where those books have gone. And if I want to, I can bring it back and it's been recovered. Okay. So that's us at our hour. Okay. It is a real whistle-stop tour of Book Creator. I hope elements of that have been useful. I hope you've picked up some tips, some hints, some things that you didn't know already. If it has raised questions, I'm happy to sit here and answer questions in the chat for a little while. But reach out to me if you want to discuss this further. If you want to ask me any questions offline, I'm happy to take that.